Happy to be with you all again. Today, I want to speak with you for a few minutes about the importance of non-reactivity in the inquiry and in your meditative practice. That's where I want to begin. Of course, if you establish yourself in a non-reactive way of being in the world, this spreads out to everything, doesn't it? To all of your activities and everything. But specifically, today I want to talk about non-reactivity in relation to the inquiry and in relation to your meditation practice. This is coming up now because I'm happy to say that quite a few people now are moving into significant states of calm and tranquility, of undivided attention as a result of doing inquiry and as a result of simple sitting and maintaining a regular inward-looking posture, we can say. So this is a good development. In my conversations with people, something that's come up quite a few times frequently lately is that there's a moment that arrives in one's inquiry or one's practice, one's presence, while formally or practicing or doing sadhana, where the mind really starts to challenge our desire to remain peaceful and calm, to be present as presence while remaining alert. So as we move closer or more deeply into the silence of being, something will cause us to react and throw us back out into the phenomenon that are rising. So, as an example, I had one conversation where someone said to me, everything is really nice, everything is really good. I'm at this place, where everything is quiet and the people are lovely, and this was kind of a retreat center kind of place. And my practice is becoming, the silence is here and it's here inside of me as well. But I really need to figure out what I'm doing with my life. So at this moment where there was this opportunity to sink more deeply into the moment and realize that the doing with your life is what you're doing at that moment. Yeah, having gone somewhere on retreat and so on, that you spend this whole period of time where you've expressed the desire by what you're doing to relax and explore more deeply this question, who am I? Or what is this? Or what is this life about? and instead is trying to go through possible and alternative plans for what comes next. Another person said to me, I'm having so much difficulty because when I quiet down in the evening, if I don't, turn a movie on or something, and I just quiet down in the evening and I sit and I meditate, it's very beautiful. And I go so deeply and it becomes so quiet and so serene. But this energy starts to come in the body. Well, of course, if you have been a meditator for a while, and maybe even if you're not, if you're just able to plunge deeply enough, you realize that the body is only made up of subtle energies, isn't it? Of light and energy. And the more the mind becomes quiet and still and moves toward the silence of being, the more these subtle energies become obvious. This is the whole science and foundation of Kundalini. That it's not that the energies are created by your practice, although they can be, if you take up formal Kundalini kinds of practices. But no matter if you're just sitting still, if you're just interested in stillness, in the inner peace and quiet, which is your nature, you will have to go through the recognition that there are subtle energies present, and sometimes they can be pretty intense. And this person said, I don't really know what to do with this. And I said, well, why not just do nothing with it? Why not just let it be? And the response was, well, because it's 10:30, and at 10:30 I have to go to bed because I have to get up at 4:30 or whatever, 5 o'clock, because I like being up in the morning and I like it when it's really quiet and the world's not awake yet. And so there was this like whole storyline about that, about why they couldn't simply stay in the bliss of the moment because they were watching the clock all the time to make sure that they got to bed at a certain time in order to get up to do something else in the morning in order to. So you may have had this kind of experience for yourself. You may be one of those people who periodically finds yourself rushing about your day because you want to get home and meditate. So you rush, and you come to your meditation cushion and you can't sit still. And you aren't sure why that's happening. After you've rushed for 3 hours through the day to try to get to some place to be able to be on your cushion at 5 o'clock. When if you had relaxed and you got to your cushion at 5:30, you might have a much deeper meditation. But because you've set it up in your mind that it needs to be a certain way, you in essence have disturbed the flow of your own intention to come into tranquility, peace, and calm. Tranquility, peace, and calm are always available to us, even when we're in a very busy moment in our life or in our day. So in each of these examples, what I want to emphasize here is not the example itself, but rather that in each one of these examples, and in any other number of other examples you can probably think of in your own practice, there comes a moment where you are entering silence. You're sinking more and more deeply into presence. And in this moment, before you recognize it, the habit of the mind, the conditioning of the mind, throws something up on the screen of awareness. It can be, oh, I have to get to bed. Or it can be, oh, I have to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. This is a moment of reactivity. The mind is telling you, well, this is important. I have to think about this now. This is something I really need to consider. And the cushion is a good place to do that. Well, this may be, but it also may be the mind just reacting to the close proximity of your own silence, your own deep recognition of who you are. And as you sink more and more into this present here now, with an alert and light mind, the conditioning of your own thinking mind, which is very familiar with your strategies, steps up and says, no, don't go there now, go here. Make this experience of energy and bliss and peace and calm and silence a problem. Or it says something like this peace, calm, silence, tranquility is not going to solve the problem of what you should do with your life, how you should be, who you should be with. You know all the strategies the mind tries to put up in front of you to get you to distract away from the peace and serenity of your own being, the deep knowing of who you are. The thing that's never considered is what might have happened, what might have become of your conditioned mind if you had done nothing, if you hadn't responded or reacted to what the mind was speaking to you at that moment, that the energy was a problem, or that the energy wasn't going to solve your problem of what are you going to do with your life, or it wasn't going to succeed in some way. Someone else this week told me that they were really stuck over the last few weeks. This is a person who's coming to satsang here, live satsang, for the last couple of months, and their mind had really begun to settle. And then they noticed over the last couple of weeks that each time the mind got to a certain point of settling, and this is a long-time practitioner, many years, not someone who's new, the mind would say, oh, this is boring. I'm not getting anywhere. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And the thought never came, how about doing nothing? How about just sitting in this feeling that you're having and doing nothing with it? Just remaining as the witness, observing, continuing the peace and calm that you started with, and just observing. This ability to witness, to observe, each and every one of you has. And right now, as I'm speaking, if you look a little bit, you'll see that right now, because this is not a conversation, I'm speaking, you are listening. So the witness is here. isn't it? The observer is here for you. You don't feel a compulsion to react. You're listening. You might react to in some small way to something I'm saying, or to my tone of voice, or to something you feel is coming through the conversation, or the ideas that are coming through the conversation. But by and large, as I look around, I see that most of you are already in the witness position. So you know this well. You know what it means to be an observer in your daily life, in a moment like this, where you aren't compelled to interact in any way, but you have sufficient interest in your mind to just remain here quietly. Isn't it so? Yes. Okay. So you know the witness, you know the observer. When you are in your moments of meditation, you are doing your inquiry, you are in your moments of silent sitting, trying to do this each day. You know what it means to come to the witness position, or come to the witnessing capability of the mind. Come to the observer capability of the mind. You know what this is. It's not something new for you. But when it comes time to simply observe energy, bliss arising in the body, that's in a strong way, which is what was indicated, like a kundalini kind of rush, you forget to keep quiet. What is this? Is this okay? I'm not sure about this. I can't have this go on much. This is kind of this is like a synopsis of the conversation. This was taking much longer to go on as the person was experiencing it. I'm condensing it. I have to do something. It's getting close to 10:30. I need to get to sleep so I can get up in the morning and have my quiet morning. Or I have the next week to be here, but but right now I actually really need to think about, I came here to be in this quiet place on this retreat, and but I really better think about what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. So this is just an indication that as we approach silence, as we approach this stillness of being, once we have moved from the head, where we've taken the concepts that we've been speaking about for the last many months, and we've fallen into the heart with them, and now we have this ability to be able to sit for periods of time and recognize the open-heartedness, the stillness, and the alertness that can allow thoughts to come and go, sensations to come and go, taste to come and go, touch to come and go, sound to come and go, without there being a thinker, a taster, a toucher, a smeller, a doer. We have this ability now. Many of you, obviously, you're saying this to me. I know you have this ability. But now what's happening, these more subtle barriers to presence, to silence are coming up. But the remedy is the same. So I just encourage you to remain as the observer. You don't know if you give up your observation, if you give up your inquisitiveness about what is this, and your ability to just observe what has risen and is dancing in front of you on the screen of awareness, if you give up your ability to do that, and you go to a movie, you go to sleep, you get up off your cushion and go for a walk, you stop your momentary silence because the mind is bored, and you start thinking about, well, what can I do next? This one man was telling me he was thinking, oh, I have to go out for a walk. And he thought, well, maybe I should move. I've been a little unhappy in my house. And he started this whole dialogue in his mind during a moment when his intention was to keep quiet. But instead, he decided maybe he needed to think about shifting his residence. So all of these things are there. And if we aren't cultivating the ability to remain non-reactive in the mind, if we aren't just simply keeping quiet, if we aren't simply just saying, okay, this is here, I'm going to do nothing with this, I'm just going to observe it, witness it, watch it, and I'm going to stay here with it, keeping my mind clear, but also calm and peaceful. We don't know when we get up and walk away in some way, either in the mind or with the body physically, from the inquiry, we simply don't know if the next moment might have been the one when that conditioning came crashing down. And in that moment, we caught a glimpse into the way that conditioning worked and also into the consequence of that conditioning collapsing. That we might come to a more open-hearted view of life and the world. We don't know if we react to what rises in mind, body, and world. We don't know if we've just postponed the moment of our final realization by going back into conditioning. So I just want to encourage you, as you continue your inquiry and your practice, to allow what comes to come, allow what goes to go. These are Bhagavan's words. This is what Sri Ramana said. Allow what comes to come, allow what goes to go. The implication here is, when you feel within your sadhana this tendency to react coming, let it go. Do nothing but continue to observe, continue to witness. Interestingly enough, the person who was having the energetic experiences, the experience of full body bliss, and then saying, "Oh, I have to go to bed at 10:30. It's 10:30. I need to go to bed. I need to get some sleep." I said, "What if you did nothing? What if you just sat there?" Well, something like, this is me saying this, but something like, "Well, yeah, but I like to get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning because I love that period of time," and so on. And I said, "Yeah, okay, but what if you just remained in that blissful recognition, full body experience, and you just let it go on?" And it went on until 5 o'clock. And then you just got up and went about your day, got up off your cushion. You just got up and went about your day. What would happen? He said, "Oh, I never thought of that." There was an opportunity presenting itself, wasn't there? For him to understand himself in a deeper way, understand himself both as an unlimited being of spiritual grace and power, and as a limited body, expecting the body to need a certain thing, respond in a certain way, want something in particular, all based on what the story of me is or the conditioning is, not based on the truth. Interestingly enough, the next night, he just allowed the energy to go. And he said, "I went until about 1 or 1:30 in the morning, and then I fell asleep." And I thought, very good, okay. And how did your next day go? Did you sleep until 10 o'clock the next morning or something? You know, that's what I was thinking. I didn't ask that, but that's what I was thinking. Did you sleep until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock? He said, "No, I was up at 5. I woke up again at 5, got up and went about my day, and that was it." You see, and this was a joyful experience for him because he suddenly realized that he wasn't limited by this conditioned construct that he had to have a certain amount of sleep and he had to do it in this way, and he had to stay on his schedule, and all of this is definitely a consequence of having a body-mind experience in the world. but also it's a consequence of not realizing the unlimited nature of your own being consciousness. Being consciousness does not need sleep. The body does. So we're not saying don't sleep, although some spiritual teachings do say that. Really reduce the amount of sleep you get. I'm more of the mind that you sleep when you need to sleep, and when you don't need to sleep, you don't need to sleep. And this is what I was trying to say to him, is that his sadhana was showing him that if he remained as peaceful and calm as he could throughout the day and came into silence over and over throughout the day, that by the time the evening came, there was going to be a momentum that had built up in terms of the energetics of the physical body, and that this might cause him not to need to sleep so much. And he could have a different experience of himself, one that wasn't defined by a pre-existing story of me. So I just want to encourage you to notice the way in which this mind that you have reacts to different stimuli in your sit, in your inquiry. And then further understand that you are not those reactions. And if you understand fully that you are not your reactions, then you can pick and choose a little bit more selectively what it is you want to believe about what limitations you have. But you can also push yourself through the limitations, through the conditionings, through the conditioned mind, into a state where you recognize that everything as it's coming and going is just fine and can be used to deepen your recognition that you are being consciousness. There is not anything in this moment which is not supposed to be here. There is no activity that's happening in the body, mind, or world which prevents you from knowing you are the self. When you run into conditioning, when you run into a feeling or a sense of limitation in some way, open your deep heart, fall into stillness, remain as you are. Don't follow any phenomenon that rises in your sadhana. Know yourself to be still, peaceful, and strong. You have the capacity and the ability. Maybe you haven't stretched with it at all so far, but you have the ability to know that you are not what is on the screen. And that when something on the screen is telling you to step into some imaginary future, or be afraid of some phenomenon that's here now, or grab a hold of something that's coming up in mind, body, or world in order to distract you away from the peace and silence of your own being, know that you have the strength to sit still, to observe, to sink more deeply into this wakefulness, into the watchfulness that you are. And you will see that these phenomenon have only a limited life, and then they go. And every time you see that, your heart opens more. It opens to who you are. As the limitations of body, mind, and world fall away. As you free yourself from the conditioning. Okay. All right, I invite you to turn on your microphone if you'd like to speak with me or share something.
Rishiji, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Atma.
Hello. I just wanted to ask you if you could maybe also elaborate a bit about strengthening the power of the focus and attention while not only being in the meditative state, but also interacting with other people and even doing different types of work. So what I can see myself if I'm a lot also in this digital environment and then it becomes very challenging because then the attention is going to the different tasks, and then at some point I can observe how it just starts being very fragmented. So even in practical speaking, I see that some thoughts they're not being channeled, and then whatever I was building up as a practice in the morning while sitting and being in a quiet space, and then I can see that after a couple of hours being engaging a lot, even in digital environment or with people's energies, and then suddenly it just seems to be very cluttered, and then I kind of force myself to sit down again and to come back to this singular attention, but it seems to be very challenging sometimes just to keep it clean, and also irrespective of the meditation, just to make your sadhana, even whatever you're doing, and even the conversation, because it seems like something that just keeps pulling you, and then it seems interesting, but then it turns out that it costs energy. So then the energy, whatever my attention is wherever it is going to, then this energy is going there. And there are days where I see that it leads to some state of exhaustion if it has been done for too long. And
so can you look a little bit more deeply into it, even in your memory right now? Can you look a little bit more deeply into it and see if you can see what the energy drain is? Because it sounds like you're saying the energy drain is the situation, the number of people or the number of stimuli that are in the circumstances for you. What is your what can you tell me about your mental state as you go through the first hour at work, the second hour at work, the third hour at work? There's no doubt that in a complex environment, it's drawing your energy. But what's going on in the mind? Is there a great deal of resistance to that happening? Is there a noticing continuously that this is not what I want? I would prefer to be meditating. Is that kind of dialogue going on? Is there a resistance to where you find yourself?
Well, I can see that there's sometimes a kind of agitation, and then whenever there's a lot of task which has to be done, and then there's a kind of a fear that you're simply not moving on with what you wanted to initially, and that if there
That you're
was
not moving what? That you're not what?
you're not proceeding. So if there was some kind of practical plan, and then a lot of new work is coming, or somebody is just interacting with you, and then you see that actually you're not being wherever you wanted to, how you planned to move on, and then there's accumulated state of agitation, and that's how I can see that sometimes I need more time just to sit again and to keep focusing my attention here.
Yeah, this seems natural in the stages of practice. This seems natural when the mind is in a very complex environment and in a very complex situation. And there isn't yet a firm enough foundation to be able to carry that, like to have a morning meditation for an hour and have that carry you for 8 hours at work. If there isn't that kind of foundation, some people are fortunate enough that they are able to get into that kind of space and it works for them. And then the work doesn't impinge on them the way that you're indicating it does for you. But there may be no other solution but for there to be a deep level of acceptance, both that I would like it to be another way and that it isn't another way, that this is the way that it is, and that your task at that moment needs to be to find a way to relax in that environment in the same way that you can when you're, say, in a meditative state on your cushion at home. Now, those are two extreme examples, so they seem like they're mutually exclusive. But when a mind is open, accepting on a deep level, not on a surface level, but on a very deep level, in other words, it's saying in a very heartfelt way, this is the life I find in front of me now, and it's okay. In a very deep way, it's just okay, so that there isn't a struggle and a resistance with the nature of the life that you're living right now. Because a lot of the exhaustion comes from this constant sense of struggle that I'm not actualizing the life I would really like to have for myself in some way. And I feel almost, and I don't know if you're feeling this way, but there's almost a sense in listening to you talk about it, it's almost as though your life is victimizing you in a certain way because it won't conform to the way you would really like it to be, and it forces you to have to deal with this chaotic environment.
At least it's the stage at the moment. It's not continuously like that.
No, I know that. No, I know that. I'm just talking about the way that it's being described. There is this element, and I know that this is always like this, isn't it? It's a wave motion. The morning starts off like this, and then it seems to go like this, and then it comes like this, and then it goes like that. So we know that's going on all the time. But it is these deep, to use the word that I was using when I was speaking about it, it is this deep unconscious reactivity to the way that things are, which is causing the exhaustion at the foundation of things. It's really not the situation, although certainly you're not in the best situation. I know you well enough to know that you have a very deeply meditative mind, given that opportunity. And so I know that that's your preference, but it's not what's here right now, is it? So the question is, how can you bring that experience of being a deeply meditative person who would in many ways prefer to work by herself and work in seclusion somewhere as a researcher and not have to engage in this digital environment with lots of people? And that may come for you someday. But that's not that the wish that that's going to come for you someday, or might come for you someday in this circumstance, is actually hindering you. When there's a deep level of acceptance that this is the way things are, and all of this is the Supreme Self, when this is a deep recognition, then this resistance, this reactivity that's draining away your energy will break down. So I think you cannot change the circumstances the way they are at the moment. And you certainly are not going to change all of those people or the work environment. So you have to look inside yourself and see the way in which this mind that wants something else or desires something else in that moment is draining your energy. Because then what happens is you have the possibility of acknowledging that the resistance, the reactivity that's going on in the mind is actually the greater difficulty. And then you can open the heart to that. You can open the heart in a way that says, yes, all of this is here now. All of this is rising together, both the busyness, the digital world, all the people, the reactivity, the resistance, all of this is coming together as a piece. But when the heart begins to open toward all of that through a deep level of acceptance that this is what is in this moment, it's not permanent. It's just what is in this moment. As the heart begins to open to that, then the being begins to, you begin to see the way that being consciousness can enfold, hold, and accept in a very, very profound way that all of this is perfect at this moment. Now, this is going to take some attention on your part, right? You can't just hear this one time. You're going to need to go into the situation a number of times and reflect on the need for you to actually, when you are wanting to focus and concentrate and be in a meditative state, and your world is going in the opposite direction, you have no choice but to accept and open to it. But understand that that's not saying that you have no choice. And because you don't want that feeling of I have no choice to fester inside of you, because that's what makes you feel victimized by your own life or your own experience, is that kind of feeling that's going on inside. I don't want this. This is not how I want my life to be, etc., etc. The mind is going on, often unconsciously, but nonetheless there in the background. And what needs to happen is there needs to be a recognition that all of this is what is here, given to me, given to this life, so that I can open, grow, realize who I am. And I don't even know why I'm learning it in this way. And I'm not even sure I like it. But my understanding is what my heart's desire is to awaken. And so I receive that what is here is coming to my benefit in some way, even if I can't see it right now. And then you have the possibility of allowing yourself to relax, to open up more fully, to do what you have to do spontaneously, to recognize a moment when the mind becomes jumbled and confused by all of the activity and all the stimulus as being something that is simply perfect. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't define who you are. It doesn't limit you. It might make you feel drained, but I'm indicating to you, and I hope you understand where I'm pointing, that draining quality comes more from the power of resistance and reactivity, than from the circumstances. So how do I work with this? This becomes your mantra. How do I work with this? How can I use this? Even in all this craziness, even in this confusion, even in this resistance, how can I use this? Because I'm really not interested in solving this problem on a individual basis. I'm really interested in looking at it as all of a piece and knowing that it was all given to me to my benefit. So how can I use it?
Accepting. And seeing that there's no one there, actually. It's just being unfolding by itself as well.
It can be very helpful, though, to see that there's no one there. One other way of looking at it is to see that all the phenomenon that are on the screen are empty. By empty, I don't mean they're meaningless or they're nothingness. I mean they are empty of any inherent value. Whatever phenomenon are here, even this phenomenon of being on the screens, our screens like this, looking at each other, this is a phenomenon which is rising in the field of conscious awareness, right? This is a phenomenon which is rising. We happen to like this phenomenon, so we are able to relax and enjoy and accept. But when that screen changes and it becomes the one you described, then you can feel this is the point at which resistance comes in. This is the point at which reactivity comes in. This is the point at which non-acceptance comes in. So all of these things are there, not to be make our lives difficult, but rather to challenge us to see through them. And one of the ways we can see through them is to see that all phenomenon, whether it's a sensation, a touch, a thought, a vision, an experience in life, all phenomenon which are on the screen of awareness are actually empty. They have no inherent selfness. Yeah. And they are not here to bother me. They are just here. Yeah. And they did not come into existence in order to annoy me. They just came into existence in the same way that I have come into existence, not knowing how or why, but into existence nonetheless. And just as I am empty and there is no one here, they are also empty and there is no one there. And all of this is the self. So yes, very good. Put those two things together and you won't have any more difficulty.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram, Alberto.
I'm going to try my best English because it's not very good, but I'm going to try my best. So I'm very glad to stay here with all of you. And it's, I feel like blissful for this space. And I'm very grateful for you and all of you to stay here. Well, I had like 6 years ago, like a crisis with, if you don't understand my words, I try to say again. So I had like a crisis like 5 years ago with a girlfriend and with my job and a lot of things. And I have like an existential crisis. So it came up like anxiety, like kind of anxiety, depression, and I was very like full of painful inside me. So at the same time, it came up like a spiritual awakening, because I tried to figure out the meaning of life. So it start my awakening, my spiritual process in this situation. But when you say not reactivity, in my case, sometimes I feel, for example, if I wake up, I sleep like, I don't know, 3-4 hours. I wake up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I start to thinking, oh, I have to wake up at 6 o'clock and go to my job, drive my car, and take another, because I'm a teacher in Spain, and take another people in my car with me. And if I don't sleep like 6-7 hours, I won't drive appropriately or correctly. So yes, so there are a lot of things like this in my head when I wake up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So I understood when you in your words before, I understood that I need to stay like the witness with non-reactivity. When these thoughts come up, I stay like the witness with non-reactivity. So this is, I focus my attention in myself, or in I don't know how to stay how can I stay with the witness. So can you give me some advice, please?
So the first bit of suggestion that I will give you is that, has it ever occurred to you, I will ask you a question first, has it ever occurred to you when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning that rather than waking up and going, oh no, this is terrible, I have to have 7 hours of sleep, I have to get up in the morning, I have to go to school, I have to pick all these people up, instead of letting that dialogue go, starting that dialogue, I mean, that dialogue may come anyway because it's conditioned, it's, you know, it's there in you. But has it ever occurred to you to simply sit up on your bed and go, oh, good, I have 3 hours to meditate?
Yeah. Like a few months ago, I start to do this thing, and I meditate maybe not 3 hours, but maybe 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, and I started to feel sleepy, and I fall asleep like half an hour, and I wake up like a lot of energy. So
yeah. So it's not a problem if you fall back asleep. That's just the body telling you it needs more sleep. What I'm pointing toward here is what you've already discovered, and I just want to support that you use that time wisely. You know, that time at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when somehow you wake up, rather than going into this self-destructive commentary about how you have to have 7 hours of sleep. No, if you had to have 7 hours of sleep, you would still be asleep. So if you're awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, you clearly need to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying there's a deep acceptance that needs to happen. That deep acceptance is that whatever is here is perfect. And now I can ask the question, how do I work with this? How can I use this? Because I only have one goal. The goal is awakening. Everything else that's happening in the waking state, in the work world, in the world at large, is just flowing through that space of awareness. And it will flow through not based on what I desire, but based on the circumstances, the conditions that it finds itself in. So if the body is awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, how can you use that? You've already discovered that. So continue in that way.
Yeah, because maybe I think that maybe it's the grace that is telling me it's time to wake up, it's time to meditate. So I feel like if the grace is telling me that, so why don't I meditate? So this is the thinking that. So the thing is, I wake up at 3 o'clock. So the grace wants me to meditate at this time. So I meditate.
Yes. So sit up and meditate.
Okay.
Understand, and you can go even more deeply than that. Understand that what you are calling grace, that is what's meditating. You are not meditating. Something has woken you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and is telling you to sit on your bed and keep quiet. Remain as you are. Open up the heart. Open up to stillness. Open up to the peace and quiet of that time of the world, when all of your neighbors are still asleep, so all that psychic noise is gone. So this is a great blessing.
Okay.
And this is not you either. So receive what is being given in the moment. Just like the other person who was, saying, I don't want to meditate at night anymore because I get so much energy and so much heart is opening and so much expansion is happening that I can't go to bed at 10:30. It's like, well, what is it that you want? Do you want to make sure you're getting to bed at 10:30, or do you want your heart to explode? Even if it keeps you up all night. Can you trust that if it keeps you up all night, you will still have all the energy from that grace the whole next day, or maybe forever? So it's the same way for you. Can you accept that this is grace, which is meditating in the middle of the night? That this is the heart opening in the middle of the night when it's peaceful and quiet and you don't have students and you don't have anybody to pick up. And so it is free. And for those couple of hours, it opens and says, perfect. All is well.
Everything is well.
Everything is well.
Thank you, Rishi.
Of course, Advaita. Of course.
Namaskar.
Namaskaram.
Namaskar. Hello.
I'm coming. Hold on, I'm coming. I have to get back to the gallery. I have to know who I'm talking to here. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, El.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Could I just contribute to the same conversation and ask?
Yes, please.
Thank you. How can I use anxiety? Because funnily enough, this conversation from today is also very, very relevant for me, but in a bit of a different way. And I've been observing my mind successfully, unfortunately, driving me a little bit crazy and creating a lot of anxiety for me. And I've been watchful, but also sucked in at times. I haven't sort of maybe found a good answer to how can I use this, like, why is my mind creating so much anxiety for my body? Is stressing me.
Yeah, so just let me say briefly that in that situation that you're describing, that may not be the right tool. That may not be the right question. How can I use this?
Mm-hmm.
What might be more appropriate is for you to ask the question, is for you to begin to notice that there is not only awareness of what you're calling anxiety and of the difficulty that's going on in the mind, but that something is tracking that. Is this true? In other words, when you get sucked into those moments that you are labeling anxiety, there is something which is aware that something has been sucked into it. So that which is aware that you've been sucked into it, into the anxiety, is actually not in the anxiety. Isn't that true?
Yes, it's basically my mind successfully making me identify with it.
So it's essentially that it's not your mind making you identify with it. It's your mind identifying with what the content of its own structure is. I say that to you in that way because I don't want you to think that what your mind is telling you constitutes your me-ness. The mind is telling the mind's story. If there is, in fact, nothing but empty phenomenon, as I just said a few moments ago, all phenomenon are empty, then you cannot say this phenomenon is me. You see, it simply doesn't make sense, right? Even to a mind which is dealing with anxiety, to say this is me doesn't make sense. And the reason is because you're calling this aspect of observation, this ability to observe or to witness, me. And then you are identifying with it. But that's not what's happening. So I'm hopefully we're pointing out to you that there is at this moment, when you are aware that anxiety is present in the mind, there is also a watcher that is saying, that is right, that is expressing that anxiety is present. But the one who's watching that or even expressing that anxiety is present is not the anxiety itself. It's something before it, or bigger than it, or larger than it, or however you want to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. The curious thing is that I recognize it and I become aware of it, and I tell myself through the mind. It makes sense.
Yes. That's the only place you can tell yourself is through the mind. You see, because yourself only exists as a mind. If you continue with this practice, and you are relatively new at this, so I will just tell you, if you continue with this practice, this question, who am I? Who is this one who is speaking to me through the mind? You'll eventually break all of this down. Not because you do it forcefully, but because you keep saying, who is talking here? What is the nature of this mind, which is labeling this anxiety and that is calling it a certain thing, that is struggling with it, that is opposing it, that is resisting it? All of these things, this is the purpose of this question, is to undermine this mind that wants to identify with its own content. You're already beginning to see, even in our few conversations we've had over the last few weeks, you're already beginning to see that there is a some experience before all of this that is able to catalog it and then come to satsang and say, this is what's happening for me. So it's registering that an experience is happening. The challenge comes, the difficulty comes, because when that cataloging is happening, there is a tendency still to say what is being seen in the content of the mind is me. No. What is being seen in the content of the mind is the content of the mind. If there is a being consciousness, and that is what's before the content of the mind. And as soon as you begin to stop identifying with the content of the mind, then the content of the mind has less and less pull on you. Causes less and less suffering, less and less stress. So the degree to which we suffer or we experience stress is directly related to the weight of identification with the content of the mind, the content of experience. So here we're not going to say there's a problem with anxiety. We're not going to label that as a problem. We're going to recognize that if anxiety is present, anxiety is present. We can even label it. This is anxiety. Now, what happens if we don't identify with it? What happens if we don't say this anxiety says something about me? Or this anxiety is who I am? Then what happens?
The thing that disturbs me the most is the effect that it has on my body and my mind and my way of interacting with the world. And I'm aware that what you told somebody earlier, the resistance is what
Yes.
drains me most. It's the going in circle. It's the
Yes, the reactivity.
yeah. Yes, again, I can see it, but I'm still. It's kind of like I recognize I'm in a vortex, but I can't get out of it.
Yeah, but you're new at this also. For you, I just have to really say you are so beginning at your journey here with this. So you need to be more patient with yourself. But understand that you are seeing the doctor. Now you need to take the medicine. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
And part of that is to be a little bit more compassionate towards yourself, a little bit more patient. Understand that the conditioning which you're speaking about is genuine in your experience, but it's not permanent. And this is what we're working with here, is we're working to understand that there is a different way of perceiving this very same experience you're having. So we're not going to do battle with the experience, because that's actually what you're wanting to do. You're wanting to do battle with your own experience. And here, the medicine is, don't do battle with your own experience. Let your experience be what it is and realize you are not that. Then the question, who am I? Or what is this? Or how can I use this? Then that question can come into a fullness of its own. But the very first step has to be, there has to be an acknowledgement that the first dose of the medicine is, you are not the concepts in your conditioning. No matter what the mind is telling you, no matter how strong it is, you are not that. And the remedy for that is to come to an understanding within yourself that you will put more effort and more energy into opening up the compassionate heart to hold all of this conditioned experience, at the same time realizing, I am not this, I am not this. That, so that you can create space for the question, who or what am I, to arise, either in your mind or on its own, just as a natural quieting, a natural calming. When there is so much resistance, as you've expressed, ahead of your peace, when you are looking so much at the content of your thoughts and your thoughts about your experiences, and the perception that the stress is affecting your body, is affecting your relationships, is, all of that storyline has the sense of being extremely real at this moment, but its reality isn't coming from the fact that it's a freestanding entity with it that's being forced on you. It's coming from the fact that you allow an identification with it. Okay? So first steps, go easily, go slowly, open your heart, be compassionate toward yourself, be compassionate to for the one who suffers. Ask, who suffers here? Who knows this is anxiety? Who labels it that and then suffers from that label? You see, you have to be willing to look at the way in which this particular mind is suffering or structuring itself through conditioning at this moment. You have to be willing to look at that and then have the deeper understanding, though a new concept for you, this is not me. Yes, it is here, but if you answer the question, how can I use it? The very first step, the very first dose of the medicine is, this is not me. And this is not something you get to do one time. Because understand that the way you describe the difficulty you're facing is really intense, right? It's intense in the mind. It has there's an intense physical reactivity in the body. So this shows that this way of responding, let's say, way of reacting, has been present a long time and it's deeply entrenched. And there's a deep level of acceptance that this is the way it is. So we can only move as quickly as we can move to loosen that deep structure and keep allowing it to fall away at a pace which doesn't put us into a different kind of panic. So we just keep acknowledging that we're not this phenomenon that's here right now. If you understand that all phenomenon are empty, and this is not a mental understanding. When I give it to you, it's a concept. But if you sit in your own silence, in your own equanimity, in your own peacefulness, if you can find a way to use whatever meditative practice you have to understand that you can sit in these moments of great difficulty and do nothing, or you can say, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, as these thoughts come. Dismiss them as quickly as possible. You'll find that that will help you. The more deeply entrenched they are, the more possible it is for you to say, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. Because they're so glaring, right? It's so obvious to you when anxiety is present and what your reactivity to that it's possible for you to simply say, I'm not that, I'm not that. And it might have no immediate effect, and it also might just slap things out of the way and give you some clear space. So you just have to try it. But also be determined that the way that the mind has been structured up till now is not the way that it has to always be structured. This process, this what I call the conscious process, for many people, you cannot simply go from, I am this person, I am this age, I am this gender, I'm doing this thing, this is my work, this is my life, this is my body, this is my illness. You cannot simply go from that to, I am the self. And all of that just shatters and falls away. This is why I say what we're doing here is more aligned with what I'm calling a conscious process. So in your case, you have to notice what's happening, and you have to be okay that it's happening. This is the heart of compassion. And you have to know, I am not what is appearing here. And we just go from there.
Thank
The
you.
idea for you at this moment is to have this method or this technique to create some space between what your mind is telling you is going on and what is actually going on. So I'm asking you to have some faith that what actually is going on is not what your mind is telling you. What your mind is telling you is based in the conditioning. It's not based in the truth of your nature.
May I add, sorry, one more detail, just in case it's useful for anybody. This is usually, at least this time, has come up when I had to make decisions. And I could actually observe how silly the whole thing was and how irrelevant those decisions were and how minuscule compared to life, and it's just somehow, because I can't dismiss the decisions, I will have to make them. So
Wait, who has to make them? And in whose time? Have you ever seen in your life that if you are absolutely, either because you decide not to make the decision or because you are in a state of confusion and you can't make the decision, there is nonetheless a moment that comes where it's clear that you take a decision. You just take a decision. Even a moment before you thought, oh, I'm so confused, I don't know what to do. But then it becomes clear that now is the moment and this has to happen, and it just happens. So what that shows you is that everything that came before that, all that worry, all that concern, all this thought patterning behavior about, I have to make a decision, I have to make a decision, and making a decision is stressful. All of that came before was simply wasted time and energy. The decision cannot be made until the decision can be made. And that decision is made by the moment. It's not made by me. It's made by a true understanding, a clear seeing of the circumstances in the moment that the decision is made. It's not made by worry and concern and upset and, stress and overwhelm. Even if that goes on for a month beforehand, all of that is wasted time. The decision only happens in the moment it can happen. And it happens because all of the conditions are right for it to happen, not because I decide. I am a minor part of that decision, this feeling of who I am. The largest part of that decision is based in life itself. And in that moment of complete awareness that the decision is happening now.
thank you. I now that you pointed out, I actually recognize it. And
Okay, very good.
Very good. So
no, I appreciate your candor because you are always very clear and very honest about where you are. And it's very helpful for many people to have someone who can so clearly and precisely say, this is what's happening. And we can say, okay, then do this. Okay, then drop that. Okay, look at it this way. This is very helpful. So
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
You have certainly in the experience we've had together over the last month or two, you have a very, very precise mind. It can look at things in very small bits and pieces and segments. And the only thing I'm going to do around our conversations together is get you to rearrange how you put those pieces together. Because you have this ability, and we want to use that ability to look at things in a very precise and direct way without fear and without sugarcoating. And all that's missing is a different way of putting these things together, so that we want to put them together in a way that supports awakening, not in a way that defeats the person. We don't need to defeat the personality. We need to move you toward awakening. And as awakening comes and the heart opens, the personality just begins to shed itself. The conditioning just begins to shed itself.
Thank you. so much.
And so I will say this for all of you, you know, we are never here in these conversations. We are never speaking to whatever limited perception or conception or story you have about yourself. We are always speaking to the self. This is self speaking with self. You can tell me whatever you'd like to tell me about any part of your aspect or behavior. I will only respond to you. You are the self. And whatever is needed to encourage you to relax into the silence of your being is what we will try to convey to you, so that you don't continue on in this belief that somehow you are the story that you are telling. You are the self. The story that you are telling is only momentarily of value. And that momentary value is so that I can say to you, that story that you are telling yourself is what is stopping you from the direct perception of who you are. So drop the story. Hello, Priya. Your microphone isn't on.
Is this working? Namaste.
Yes. Yes, namaste.
As you know, I found myself back in Holland.
Yes.
With my parents and my mom, who had the notice from the doctor that she's dying. There's this interesting thing that has been happening ever since I moved into their house. I found myself to be in a situation where there was a lot of despair and helplessness and powerlessness, as in the energies in the house.
Yes.
Because she got the news she's like dying in 2 months.
Yes.
And I was in a very good space when I entered, and I could see these energies were just pressing on me. But throughout the last year, there's been less resistance on certain energies or preferences of energies. So I was very much able to just watch them, to not resist them, to not have a preference, and just be very aware that these are just energies and I'm not that. In the course of the, I think, 4 or 5 days that I stayed with my parents, my mom was starting to feel better, which is great. but I was starting to feel worse, a whole lot worse actually, to the point that I felt so drained that I had to move out. And I found myself another place now, and it's going much better, but I'm so surprised about what happened. And I can't really place it either, because I can't really, from my point of view, there's been full acceptance of whatever energies were there, even the news of my mom dying. And maybe there's a lot of unconscious stuff happening, probably, but it's been very interesting. Like, if thoughts are there, you can see them, and you are aware of it, of physical sensations or emotions, and it was nothing like that. It was just energies and watching energies, and then feeling they were crushing me to the point that I had to leave. So I'm very confused actually what's been happening here, or what it is that I'm not seeing.
All phenomenon are inherently empty. When you know this, you know this phenomenon is empty, and you know that phenomenon is empty. Then there is freedom in every circumstance. In every state of mind, there is freedom, because the recognition is stronger that all of these phenomena are empty. Okay, so this is the ideal. This is the recognition of realization. Okay? When a person says, you just said, I don't understand what's going on here, but there was this energy and it was pressing on me. That's all that comes to mind. This me is not experiencing itself as empty phenomenon, and it is not experiencing the emotional content of the energy around in that state of despair, having just learned that she only has 2 months to live. It's also not seeing that as empty. And that's not to minimize your experience or their experience or what's happening, because this is the experience of her dying. This is not the experience of you dying. So you have to deal with the way in which she is processing this news which has just come, and the recognition that she may only have 2 months left. But what you've also done by going into the space with this open heart is you've given an outlet for that despair to flow from her or them into the open space of your own heart. Where you ran into difficulty is in the perception that there is a me here to receive that despair. And so you've taken it on. So come now to this recognition that you can absolutely take this on, but don't hold it there. Take it on and pass it through into your perception of open awareness. You see, her perception of despair is coming from awareness through a limited focal point. You can take it on as a more open focal point, you can say, and pass it back to awareness, which is where she is going anyway, and where everything goes in the end anyway. So you can pass it back through your open awareness and release it. If you say, I am taking it on, then it will stick. If you say, all of this phenomenon, and if you understand it, not just say it, but begin by saying it, and then see if you can experience it. that all this phenomenon which is coming at you is empty. The way we realize that it's empty is we give it no meaning. We don't let the mind run away with any ideas about what the content of it might be. We realize that it is transparent, and we realize that it is all being reabsorbed into the self. And we open. The degree to which you experience a reaction to what you named as despair in the household, you were able to stay open with it for many days, but it slowly wore you down. That's a slow moving reactivity, rather than the quick kind of reactivity comes when somebody, says something to you immediately in your face, and you without even thinking, you just react in some way. This is a slow moving reactivity where you live in the space of what your parents are experiencing right now in this moment, and understand that that despair that they're experiencing now may or may not go all the way through this experience for your mom. It also can come to the fact that they may process this sense of despair very quickly and realize that if she does indeed only have 2 months to live, despair is not where they really want to be. And so you be ready for it to keep shifting. But each time it shifts, you need to open and recognize that whatever is happening in the experience is empty. Not empty of meaning for your family, certainly, but empty of any inherent decision you can make about it, anything you can say about it, any opinion you can have about it is not going to matter. So you try to open your heart and you try to receive what comes your way, but don't make decisions about it. Pass it on to the self. If you must do something, pass it on. Don't cling. And don't behave in the situation like something is happening to me. Like I am taking something on. No, the self is just doing what it's doing at this moment. Life is doing what it's doing. So
this is why I was so. This is why it took me so much by surprise, as what I said. Like in the past, there was I could sense all these energies and be reactive to it. But over the last couple of years, I became more translucent to it. So it kind of moved through me. So there wasn't any reactivity to it. And now there also was no reactivity. I could just see it and I didn't have an opinion. And I also thought it was just flowing through me, but it was just like really wearing me down. Although I was very much watching the mind and the emotions, and I didn't see any identification on that level. But I do realize in the way I communicate with you that I say, Priya is actually, being worn down by these energies. Yes.
Yeah. So all this means for you, Priya, is that you just hit a new edge. You said you've been working on this for a couple of years. So now you've come up to a new edge. And now the practice is still the same. The response is still the same. Open the heart further.
Okay.
And even to the one that you're calling Priya, that is somehow feeling the weight of this, coming, and felt like, I want to say, I do wholeheartedly agree that in that circumstance, as a sadhak and as a practitioner, that in that circumstance, when you realize that you are not really able to be of any value in that circumstance because it has become so heavy or so heavily weighted or whatever, then the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself and for them is to step aside. This is an indication of a selflessness that says, this is not the right moment for me to be here. We do this for all of you that are listening. We do this in lots of different relationships. We know when it's time for us to be quiet, to remain as we are and to withdraw a little bit in order to give someone else the space to be freely and wholly engaged in whatever the process is for them. That this is a compassionate response. And at the same time, that we give ourselves the space to be able to have these conversations, to be able to sit deeply in our own silence and ask, how can I use this? You know? And I think you've discovered that. You're just up against an edge that you thought you had moved that edge pretty far, and apparently you had. Apparently you had, though. But now you're back on that edge again. And for you, you know, as a sadhak, the practice is still the same, and that is open more, remain compassionate first toward yourself, be very kind toward yourself, very non-judgmental, and then you'll be able to offer that to them.
Yeah.
All is well. Everything is fine. Yeah. Don't worry. You have enough on your plate. Yeah.
It's beautiful to see now that I've been moved into my own space. I'm recharging again. And indeed, what you say, I can be of much better value for them.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been a good decision.
And you'll notice as you go through this process with your folks that you'll be more and more able to just be present in it as presence itself, not, you know, and you'll be there for what they need, and, you know, and you'll be able to open your heart more and more in that space. And that will be the greatest value and service for them at the time also. Mm. You are being moved here, you know. So it is of great value to be in these situations and to realize that it is not me which is doing anything. It is life itself which is orchestrating this whole dance. And sometimes life says, go more deeply into the situation. And sometimes life says, get yourself an apartment so you can be more present in a bigger way.
Yes, and it's exactly what you're saying. Like the old condition would be like get into a fighting mode, try to change it, try to do it for her. And now it's just about being aware of just being, you know, just being.
Just being, yes.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest gift you can give anyone at the end of their life is that someone comes into the room who has the capacity to just be with what is. Because she may be in this despair now, but there will come a moment of acceptance. And in that moment of acceptance, there's the possibility of transcendence, isn't there? And if someone is in the mind, the heart of being at that time, this is the one person that the person who's transitioning really wants to normally be around, because they can feel the spaciousness there. Whereas other people are coming to visit them and are, you know, feeling sorry for them, pitying them, being of, you know, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do. If someone walks in and doesn't have an agenda, doesn't know what to say or do, but also doesn't need to say or do anything, it's just there as being, as open-hearted love, as being. This is the person who's most useful at that moment for someone who's transitioning. And don't be surprised if you keep going and there's still a lot of heavy energy, and each time you walk away, you feel like you take a little piece of it with you, because that's what we do as humans. You know, we have compassion, we have love, we have relationship. So when things are shifting dramatically like they are now for your family, then I know, just from knowing you for the last couple of months or month, I just know that for you, if you can ease her burden by taking some of that energy home with you, you will, because you will cleanse it, you will drop it, you will put it down, you will bring it into the heart of being, and you will pass it through to the self. So if this is a service that you can do in the quiet of your own being for the next couple of months, then so be it, huh? We serve in the ways we can.
Yeah, this is exactly how it feels. And it's been surprising also, because one of my biggest fears has always been to lose my mother. And now that I'm actually facing it, I don't experience, Priya doesn't experience any fear at all. It's just not there.
Beautiful.
Mm. Mm. At least not yet. I don't know what's coming. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. I wish you well on your journey, and your mother with her journey, and your father with his.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because it's such deep foundation structures, no? Like a father and a mother. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really glad to have you in this way. Although it's not my beloved Tiruvanamalai.
There'll be a time for that.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. Sure.
It's a great gift to be awake in the middle of this moment in your life as well. So stand still, stand in it, keep your heart open, keep letting go. We'll keep the door open for when you're ready to come back. May you be well and happy. Hari Om Tat Sat.